Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Bazzoni. Welcome and good day to our 10th virtual Thursday session of the year. I'm one of the regional trainers with emergency reporting. Today we have a special guest, David Richardson from the Midwest City Fire Department located in Oklahoma, helping provide us some pointers on using emergency reporting to prepare and excel with an ISO survey and evaluation. For those who have had the privilege of being part of an ISO evaluation, many can agree that preparation is key for a successful visit. Hopefully today, David can provide us some insight and some guidance to help prepare you for a future ISO visit. Potentially, we might have one of our other individual trainers in, Tom Lewis, professional service manager. He might pop in here and say hello. Many of you will probably recognize him. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, emergency reporting offers free virtual Thursday training sessions every first and third Thursday of the month. 1100 hours Pacific time, 1400 hours Eastern time. For those agencies that would like to take advantage of some additional training, emergency reporting also offers some online training available in 3-hour blocks on whatever topic or material that meets your needs. In addition to that, we also offer on-site training sessions where one of us trainers will travel to your location to provide training at a site location of your choice. For costs and fees, and if further information on this, please contact our training coordinator, Nicole, for further information. Contact information is available through our website or by emailing training@emergencyreporting.com. And again, last but not least, but wait, there's more. We also conducting regional training academies across the various locations across the country. In fact, there's actually one going on this week inside Seattle. Here's a list of our upcoming RTAs shown here. Registering is easy as clicking a link on your login page. It'll take you to directions that. And these, again, Charlotte is our next one in June. It's being sold out very quickly. Our next one up here is in Denver in August, September, San Antonio, Texas, and in Oklahoma City in October. As we begin our presentation, I'll turn the reins over here to David Richardson. If anybody has any questions related to the presentation, please send them in their questions box. I will answer them as they come across or table them for David to answer periodically throughout the presentation. Towards the end of the presentation, we'll try to get all questions answered, even if it means hanging out a few minutes past the hour, if you're okay with that. I'm going to throw some couple poll questions up here. I just want to me and Dave want to get a general idea of what we got going with our audience here. First question I'm going to send across the screen here, if you go ahead and answer it for me, is, have you or your agency taken part in an ISO evaluation within the past 5 years? So I'll leave it open for about 10, 15 seconds here and see what kind of answers we get across. And I'll close it out. Looks like our answers are dwindling down here, so I'm gonna go ahead and close out this poll here, and we're gonna share the results. So it looks like we have 66% yes, and 28% no, and 6% are unsure, and that's okay. One more poll question here we're gonna pop up, and this one's going to be, gotta hide those results here. And the next one's going to be, if you answered yes to the previous question, were you able to use ER's features to help you prepare for your agency's ISO survey? All right, looks like they're slowing down now, so I'm gonna go ahead and close out this poll, share those results. So looks like we got 23% absolutely, and 77% of you are here. No, but I wish I knew what I was going to learn today. So hopefully we get you some good answers to some questions you have. David's got a lot of good pointers, a lot of reports he's going to share with us. And as always, all these sessions are recorded, so if you do miss some information, we'll definitely have it posted up within a couple days so you can watch it again for more information. So without further ado, David, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you if you're ready.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Michael.
All right, let me get a couple of seconds going here, and David, you should have presenter.
Okay, is everybody seeing the screen?
David, you may have to close out the poll. I'm not sure if I did on that. I apologize.
Okay, no problem.
Hide the results.
Hide those results real quick. All right. Okay.
All right. Still waiting on presenter Dave. You're gonna probably have to share your main screen or your PowerPoint.
Okay. Showing now.
Not yet. There we go. We're across now. We're
Okay.
live.
All right. Very good. Okay. So my name's David Richardson, and today we're here to discuss how ER can hopefully help your next ISO visit. A little bit of history about myself. Let's see here if this is going to advance. There we go. Some short background. I worked for ISO for 7 years before getting into the fire service. And since I've been in my fire department, I've led our department through 3 ISO audits. And every time we've gotten an ISO Class 1. So there are some tips that I think I can help everyone that's on the webinar today to learn. And that's what I'm here to do, is help pass that on. Number one thing, just to give you 3 or 4 slides here, is that ISO affects virtually everyone. For anyone, I guess there's a few people that hadn't been through an ISO audit. Every property with insurance in the United States can be completely affected by your ISO rating. Whether it's on a 1 or if it's a 10, somehow that's going to have an effect on everybody's property. Just some background on that, an ISO scale is something that's from a 1 to a 10. 1 is the best, 10 means there's no recognized fire protection. A 9, class 9, would be that there's a truck, but not necessarily any water. And then classes 1 through 8 would have a truck and water. And then there can be some more obscure classes, split classes, combination of truck and water, hauled water. But the number one thing you need to remember on a class 1 through 8 is that there has to be a hydrant or some sort of creditable fill point within 1,000 feet of the structure and within 5 miles of the fire station. So where did all this begin? Why does ISO even care about the fire service? Well, in the late 1890s and early 1900s, there were several humongous fires, and there were billions of dollars were lost when people back at that time couldn't even comprehend what $1 billion was. I mean, it wasn't even in their vocabulary. So the National Board of Underwriters developed a grading system, and that's basically, we still use a version of that system today. You'll hear about, well, the horses could only run a certain amount of, a certain distance before they ran out of steam and they were worn out. That system from the 1890s is what we kind of use today, but it's a lot more developed and a lot more sophisticated than what it was back then. So what can you expect when ISO says, hey, it's time for us to come out? Well, back in 2013, they updated the FSRS, which is the Field Suppression Rating Schedule, and they started citing specific NFPA standards. That was one gripe that a lot of fire departments said was, where are you guys coming up with the need for this or that? And so ISO kind of reevaluated everything, said, hey, you know what, you're right. Maybe we don't need 2 solid stream nozzles. Maybe we can use a fog nozzle, or we can use, we don't need a distributing nozzle. We can use a piercing nozzle. So they changed some of the stuff and started citing NFPA standards. And then in doing that, the insurance companies were like, hey, you know what? We want you to get out there, and we want you to get out there fast and give us volume, give us quantity. We want you to get up-to-date information, because it used to be every 5 to 10 years maybe they'd come out, if you're lucky. And I think we had 28% of people have never even been through an ISO audit. So what they do, in an effort to do that now, you'll get a pre-survey packet, and they want to be out there in like 2 hours. They may hit 2 or 3 communities in a day, where it used to be 1 a week back when I used to work for them. So volume is a big deal. Well, that's where ER is going to help get you there. It's going to get you in and out, get them out of your hair, and move on and get your grading back quicker. 4 areas that ISO is going to hit on real quick are communications. That's going to be how many dispatchers you have. You may not even have any control over that. It could be the county sheriff. It could be, who knows what it is. Could be within your control or without or outside your control. But the communications, how you handle and receive alarms from 911 till it comes to your station, is worth 10% of your grading. The fire department's 50%, and I think that's where a lot of people get confused, is that they think it's a fire department grading, but really, almost 50% of it is out of your hands, because the communications may be out of your hands. So the fire department is relied upon for the large majority of it, but it's not 100% a fire department audit. And then the water department is 40%, of which 35% is your water distribution system, whether it's hauled water or a complete hydrated system in your community, it plays a big part. And then new for 2013 was the community risk reduction. And we'll talk about that a little bit more because those bonus points are what have held us our ISO 1 the last 2 times. Without those bonus points, we would not have maintained an ISO 1. So some of the goals in surviving your ISO audit for those 28% that have never been through them or the ones that have gone through it is you want to maintain your existing rating. Yeah, ISO expects that you've grown and you've kept up with those demands. If you can improve, great. Some areas have more resources and finances, but then if you've lost or had some economic downturn, you don't want to retrogress. So record keeping is one thing you can fall back on, and that's where ER comes in to help. So the number one thing you can do to be prepared, and I'll probably say it 3 or 4 times throughout this presentation, is garbage in is garbage out. We, even as an ISO Class 1, struggle on getting the data and the information into our system accurately, properly, regularly. It's something that that's one of my jobs is to maintain that and to get that information regularly input correctly, monitor it, maybe every quarter, looking at stuff. Of course, the INFRS reports every month. With ER's trigger, I can't submit a report that hasn't been reviewed or completed, so that's a wonderful thing because I can go and say, hey, there's 8 reports that are outstanding, and I can get that information clarified. And the analytics module can help find errors and stuff as well. So having someone look at this information or a crew of people, a committee, whatever you want to call it, is going to be helpful. So let me give you a quick little rundown of what a lot of the next few slides are going to be over. It's going to be over my community, Midwest City. We're 26 square miles, 56,000 population, 6 stations, 75 full-time suppression personnel, 8 admin prevention training. We run around 7,000 calls a year, give or take a couple hundred. Pretty typical for a medium-sized department. And we have had an ISO Class 1 in 2005, 2013, and 2016. Prior to that, we were in ISO Class 2 for several, I think 10 to 15 years. So we made that jump. And we were just a suburb of Oklahoma City and an Air Force base. So the modules that helped us and that we use every single day that I can directly correlate with ER are these 12 modules. The incidents, the hydrants, the maintenance, the occupancy, training, reports, library shifts, all of those have some form or fashion an impact on the data that I'm going to give an ISO field rep when he comes. Now, it may not be a report from every single one of these, but ultimately all of this information is going to provide the data that ISO is going to be looking for. So it takes me to this screen. This is actually an attachment that you can download from this webinar. This is probably one of the most important slides you'll see. What I've done is I've taken time here to show you about 60% of your grading of the information you're going to provide to the ISO rep can be done with these reports right here. Again, the communications component doesn't have a whole lot of reporting because they're asking, hey, what's your method? No, we use radios. We use a town siren. We've got rip and tear sheets, whatever that is. Doesn't really apply to a whole lot that you're recording in ER. So we kind of move immediately to the fire department portion, which is 50% of the grading. And you can see right there kind of some of the percentages. The equipment you keep on engines. Well, are you using the inventory module? Great. Then you can run report 1086 and print out a complete list of what's on the apparatus to give to the ISO rep. Same thing for the ladders. 1089 isn't necessary. You can kind of interchange either the engines or the ladders. 1086 will let you choose the individual apparatus. Maybe you don't want to put some fire prevention vehicles or a chief's vehicle on there. And 1089, that report will just summarize everything on one report. So you can use either one of those reports to help get you the information for 10% of your grading right there. It's a little more in depth than just 10% of the equipment, but it'll get you a great start. Then it moves on to the deployment analysis, and we're going to touch on that. Then the company personnel and the training hours a lot more in depth on the next few slides. The rest of them, the hydrants, the community risk reduction and whatnot there, just use the slide to help give you a guideline of maybe some reports that would help you give the information you need to either improve your ISO grading or be able to hand it out to personnel to start recording this information. Again, the community risk reduction, I kind of wanted to highlight that at the very bottom there. because those points they're like bonus points. They're just, after you're done with this grading, after you've done your 10% communications, your 50% fire department, your 40% water, now you're left with, well, how well do you reach out to the community? How well do you do, investigations, inspections? Oh yeah, we do that, or we do a pretty decent job. Here you go. Here's some extra points that go on top of everything. The old system used to be a 100-point scale. Now it's a 105.5 scale. So definitely hone in on some of those points. We don't get 100% of our community risk points, but we got enough that helped us push us over the 2 to a 1. So let's focus on those 3 modules and get to what you guys are here to learn about. Incidents. When I talk about incidents, that is showing your performance on how well you are responding to your fires, how quickly you are, and with what apparatus. An ER report we're going to discuss here in a minute will provide that ISO rep with that information. Training, a heavy hitter, 9%. There's probably a lot of things. Back when I used to work for ISO, there's so much training that people just never recorded, just didn't take the time to input it in there. And I can't stress enough, get it in there. And then daily roster, that is the single largest item you can have, is your staffing. Whether you're volunteer or a paid department, there's nothing heavier on your point that you could provide to ISO than your daily roster. And we'll get into that, basically saying a method that will get you those few extra points, instead of just saying, hey, our minimum manning is 16, minimum manning is 19, minimum manning is 20. This will, if you say, hey, my minimum manning is 21.68, they're going to credit that extra point whatever on there. And that's how those little things are what are going to help separate you to the next ISO class. So let's get in a little deeper on incidents. Item 560 of the ISO book, the FSRS, the Field Suppression Rating Schedule, basically on the new one allows the ISO rep to use the better or combination of actual performance, which is an FPA 1710 times, or traditional station hydrant distribution study. That is the map that you've probably, those of you, the 68 or 66% that have gone through this before, you may have had maps that you looked at. And if you've done it since 2013, you may have provided these 1710 numbers to get a better score. And that's what I'm going to show you, kind of some difference here. We're a fully paid department, and we used a combination of both because it came to our advantage. Most of the time, paid departments will probably see better times with their 1710 data from ER versus you drawing a map or having a GIS department develop a map for you, while volunteer departments may see a little bit better from the map study. So let's get into the ER report here in a second. Quickly, to show those that want to know what a map study looks like, that I threw this slide in here. If you look at the smaller squares, those are 1.5 miles from the center point of a station that provided our community, which is 26 square miles. We had a 76% engine coverage. Our ladder is the larger center point one with the dots around it, the dotted 2.5 mile ladder study. That gave us 41% coverage. And then the blue everywhere else is our 1,000-foot buffer around every hydrant. So from that, we were able to give the ISO rep, here you go. We have this based upon the good old-fashioned, here's where our stations are. This is where we think our best deployment analysis would be. So he takes that, but then he's like, hey, can you run me a report? Absolutely. Emergency reporting's got a report specifically designed for this. It's report 1722, and that gives all the data that's necessary for the ISO rep to see for the things he's going to hone in on. When you go to run the 1722, it's going to allow you to select the apparatus. In our case, we hit the pick multiple, and then we would select our engines and ladders. Or if you have a service company as well, hit those. We do a date range. The rep usually wants to see the last 12 months. And then response mode, we always want lights and sirens because we don't care about anything that's non-emergency, or maybe it's just a smoke check or anything. We don't want to dilute the waters or make a delayed response be added into our numbers. And then if you use the zones function in ER, you'd want to select all zones. We've chosen the 111 in first code every single time, and they've been fine with that. Your rep may say, hey, I want to see some others, 112s, and some others, some kitchen fires. But then I export it to the Excel file, the CSV, and from there I would get this report. And this is what the 1712, I've kind of condensed it to make it fit on the screen, but this is what the report's going to look like. You're going to see your incident number, alarm, date and time, the dispatch date and time. That's going to be your 1221 times, which they probably won't focus on those at all because they're strictly looking at your deployment analysis. So they're going to take the difference between dispatch and en route, and that's going to give you that yellow column, which is your turnout time. And then the arrival time is going to be the difference between, the arrival time was the time that was either time stamped from your apparatus, MCT, or dispatch, but the difference between the en route and the arrive time is going to give you your travel time. And then the 1710 time, the green column, is going to be the total of them all. And what the ISO rep's going to be looking for is, if you can see in the middle of all those charts there's kind of a little bit thicker black line. Above it is a 2-engine and ladder response, and below it is a 2-engine ladder response. So we've got 3 rows of one call and then 3 rows of another call. And that ISO rep's looking for 2 engines and a ladder responded, because that we require a ladder for the size of our community. And so they're going to look for 2 engines and a ladder, or 2 engines and a service company, depending if you need a ladder or not. So this report, boom, immediately shows them what they were looking for. They got the turnout time, the travel time, and the total time for 1710 time. And then he's verifying that 2 engines and a ladder arrived, and he's able to look at this. Now, our report, we average full-on structure fires 30 or less probably in a given year. That's like hose on the ground. And so this report would be a lot longer, but I'd provide that to him. He would plug all these numbers in to his system, and he's going to be looking for one in the lower right. You can see first engine arriving within 320 seconds or 5 minutes and 20 seconds. And he's going to plug that in and then make sure a full response was there as well. So when everything was said and done, between the map and the performance study from our ER report, we had a 68% engine compliance and 100% truck or ladder compliance. So before we had, I think it was around, the engine company was 74% coverage on the map and 41% on the ladder company. So this is where they combined both. That was 76, I'm sorry. So he took the 76% map study and then 100% of response within 1710 times on the ladder company, and he combined them, and then that is what he used for the final report. So again, that's report 1722, and that'll give you what you need to give the ISO rep for your performance or your deployment analysis. Now we're going to move on to training. Any questions about that at that point? I don't see anything on there.
Yeah, David, we had one that popped. We had one that popped.
We did have one.
Yeah,
okay.
one of the attendees requested that map study. Can you provide a little more insight? Obviously, it's not something inside of ER, but how they can acquire something of that nature.
Well, okay. The good old fashioned, you could print a map. Go to Kinko's or something and print a map. I'd recommend a 2 foot by 3 foot, and then you're going to plot every station. Like if you've got 3 stations, make a nice dark mark where that station's at. And then the simple method is just to go out 1.5 miles in each direction. So it'll be 3 miles, from all the way across to cross, east-west and north-south. It's going to be 1.5 miles from that center point, but the total, distance is going to be 3 miles. And then and then you'll put all those over and map them all out. And you can overlap them as well. But when you do the hydrant counts, you only count the hydrants, which is you get really deep on a distribution study, but you only count the hydrants once. You don't count them in each fire district or each station district. And then on the ladder company, it may be housed in the same as an engine company, but regardless of that, you would put it and do a 2.5 mile. So you'd go in every direction 2.5 miles. So it'd be 5 miles totally north, south, east, west. Now, if you want to pay a GIS company, they're going to get accurate and be like, okay, when I go east-west, ultimately it's going to look like a diamond, kind of a polygon, which I think I can back it up a little bit there on that map. It was, there wouldn't be perfect straight lines because there's going to be neighborhoods with cul-de-sacs and dead ends, but overall it would still look a lot like a diamond, regardless of how you did it. But it gets a lot more complicated, and I'd be definitely happy. I wouldn't have enough time to discuss how to determine additional engine company locations. But for like us, the lower right, if 50% of the hydrants that were the average amongst all those, if that lower right area on that map had 50% of the hydrants, let's say it was 100 in that Station 5 area, and I had 50 out in this other lower right area, I would need another engine company. If it was 40, I would not need another engine company, and I would not be deducted by the ISO rep. So it gets a little vague there, a little more difficult in discussing it on this situation, but that's kind of how the study works. And the ladder company is the same way. It counts the number of hydrants, and if there's a 50% amount of an area that's not covered by a ladder company and has 5 or more buildings that are 3 stories, actually 35 feet or taller, or a needed fire flow over 3,500 gallons a minute, then a second ladder company would have to be required. Again, I know I'm flying over what a distribution study is, but I'd definitely be happy to help anyone that needs a little more information on how a distribution study is done. That's how the mapping version is done. And again, the performance would be your 1722 report. Does that help?
Thanks, David. Yeah. Got a reply back that answered the question. So,
okay.
Just kind of touch base a little bit further on that. I don't want to spend too much more time on it. Brandon did ask for a combination departments. Will NFPA 1720 reports play a role? Are we still better off utilizing the station hydrant fill point map study?
Well, it ultimately will depend. If you're getting your first engine there using 1710 time, within that 320 seconds, absolutely, you definitely want to have that. Your full response maybe 8, 10, 12 minutes later, but you do have a full response. That first engine getting there within that 320 seconds in travel time is what you're trying to prove. It's not your overall time, but your actual travel time. So that a combination department, absolutely, I would try and run the 1710 times, unless you're waiting for a full complement or a full crew to get to the station before rolling that truck. Then the map study would probably play a better part.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
That looks like we're it for now.
Okay, training, using 3.0. Now there's numerous ways to set up your training. That's probably a whole nother virtual Thursday, but this is kind of the way that we view training for our department, and it's what's kind of worked for our ISO audits. We kind of look at the class categories as feeding the tree. We had 5 to 8 kind of really high level items. Then I know everybody's probably heard the tree analogy from ER, from your trainer, from your sales rep, and we use the same deal, but the trunk added a few more than branches, and then the leaves were the standards, which don't necessarily apply as much to the ISO component, but the branches are definitely where we kind of target everything. So again, recap, training counts for 9% of your ISO grading. And what is ISO going to look at? Well, they want to see your training facility, your live training and smoke room, a drill tower, 2 acres, and every member on the new schedule should attend 18 hours a year. Now, we don't have a burn building in our community. We've got one on the military base immediately south of us, and then immediately west of us, we have got a burn tower as well that we're able to utilize. As long as no more than 50% of your personnel ever leaves the district to train there, they should credit that for you. And if you can log your hours in ER of using that, then you should get potentially full credit on that item there. The company training, it's the next biggest item. The goal there is flat out to log your company training and almost make it a standard within your department, an annual goal of 192 hours per member. We take it so seriously that we've put it on our annual evaluation that did you complete 192 hours in your annual evaluation? Some guys may get 300, some may get 150, but what we're shooting for is an average of 16 hours per member per month, because that's what ISO standard is for company training. Oh, I got ahead of myself there. So there's kind of the math behind of why we require that. So in this next slide I'm going to show you here in a minute, we didn't quite meet that. We had 189 on average, 189 hours per member per month. But we'll get to that here in a second. This kind of further breaks down the training that ISO looks for. All of this you need to be recording. I stress this. I tell our guys this every month. I tell the new guys, and it still fails. So don't feel bad. You'll still miss some of the stuff. You'll have coffee break conversation. Hey, did you log that driver training? Oh man, I forgot to do that. It's a struggle we all deal with, but try and get the best you can. The training logged. Because officer certification, here you go. Continuing education, here you go. All of this stuff, new driver training. You may not, hey, we haven't had a new driver in the last year. Okay, well, what do your SOPs say? Well, they have to have, before I'm going to let them pump this truck, what do you need? And that will work sometimes for the ISO rep. Hey, we require this. And existing driver training, you would show on your ER report where maybe the new driver training or new recruit training, maybe more of a, because you haven't had anybody hired in the last 12 months, you may have to show some documentation. The recruit training using NFPA 1001, I think it's 240 hours before you're no longer a rookie. That's what they're looking for there. And then pre-incident planning, NFPA 1620. This is not, hey, my fire prevention office went out and did inspections. This is a completely separate component. They want to see that 100% of your personnel is participating, your suppression personnel is participating in a pre-planned survey, and that is to protect them. They know what they're out there doing. They're not looking for code violations. They're out there looking for, hey, oxyacetylene is kept in high volume in the back corner of this building. That is what they're there for. So be sure, and a lot of departments that when I worked for ISO, they would confuse pre-incident planning with annual occupancy inspections. And just want to clarify that for everybody. Hold on, looks like we had a question there.
Yeah, Dave, you got a question there if you want to jump on. It says, for Brandon, again, I watched another virtual Thursday and it was recommended that utilizing the standards part of the training module to account for the various training types is a recommended practice. Is that something you consider a purpose to do?
Let's see here.
Utilizing the industry standards?
Oh, on the industry standards? Yeah, we did for a while. Absolutely, we did. And it really helped. And now that ISO is kind of focusing on specific NFPA standards, let's see if I back up a slide, I probably will have that.
I think where Brandon might be heading with this is you can also document the ISO standards, obviously the new driver, existing driver and stuff as a standard inside the training module settings, and then document that on the page 1 of the class. So just another way you can pull a different report.
Okay, yeah.
If that's where you're headed. So okay. I think, Brandon, if that's kind of where you're headed, let me know. If not.
And then was there a second question there?
Yeah, Dean asked, what is the best practice to get 100 pre-plans whenever you have a department that has 17 part-time paid and the remainder of personnel volunteers? This has always been a challenge.
On the pre-plans?
Yeah.
Yeah, getting them done. It's just a rotation. The first year is always the hardest. Once you get the pre-plans done and created, then it would be, which is going to be the biggest hurdle, I get that. But once it's done, then just following up on it annually would be, it's like, hey, the pre-plan is done. Just go over there, verify that it's the same owner, the same information, nothing's changed, the same occupancy is there. And I don't know how to get over the actual hurdle of, hey, we got low staffing. Again, that's where the scale of 1 to 8 exists for ISO. I mean, that's kind of the cold hard truth, is that they don't care about life necessarily in EMS terms. They just care about property conservation. And if you can't get there, then and if it's appropriate for you to be a 6 or a 4 based upon the way the department operates, that's kind of what the whole scale is all about.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question there?
Okay, looks like we're all caught up. Yep.
Okay. Here's a quick breakdown of the ISO items. Again, 50% of the grading is the fire department, 9% is the training. And this is a quick rundown of a previous slide a little bit, but it shows the exact ISO item and what each one and what makes up that 9% for the training. And if you have no records, you decide not to use ER, you'll take a 25% hit for not having any documentation. So again, the ER, just having your records is going to give you points. This is the report 1623. It's one of the best I found for summarizing what we do. In an annual year, I can give the ISO rep, I've got a 2-inch white 3-ring binder, and I print off all these different reports, and I say, here you go. And I've gotten, on this report, I've gotten over and over, thank you. This report gives me exactly what I need. Because when you go into 1623, you're able to select the training codes. Maybe there's things that are, like, you may not select EMS stuff, because the ISO rep, again, they're heartless. They don't care about EMS. They just want to know, what are you doing to mitigate property and training. And there may be some things that are kind of gray that you could kind of commingle or cross pollinate, like an extrication. Well, we use these same tools for forcible entry, and then they'll be like, okay, I get that. And so that is one thing that you're able to do, is cross-pollinate things, and you might want to add them in there. But this is kind of an extreme. I think I probably put more than I should have on this one, but I put all my training codes in there and I probably cut them off a little bit. But it kind of shows you the different things that are there. I can just hand that to the ISO rep. You decide what is or isn't credible. Maybe you want to take that route. And again, I kind of pointed out the company training. That's the one that you really want to make sure you're shooting for 192 hours per member per year. Again, it's simply taking all those hours, which in this case was 16,284, divided by 86. I think it's around 189 hours. So we came up a little bit short there. Some guys, again, may get 300, 400 hours. Some guys get 50. There could be guys on injury leave. There's a lot of different things that could happen there. But the overall average, they're not going to break down and look at the individual records. They're going to want to know, hey, what's your total? And so that's where this report shines. It's like, here you go. Here's my new recruit training. How many new recruits did you have? We had 2. Great. You exceeded what we're looking for. You had this or that. So this report really was a lifesaver. If they wanted to see anything specific, we could just simply pull up ER from, of course, any browser, and boom, here it is. But this report gave them everything they wanted. Any questions about this report? I see one question there.
I'll handle that one there, David.
Okay. All right, so let's get back. Okay, so that's it on the training. It's a big item, but if you use that, that report, then you're going to get what you need pretty simply. All right, so we're going to go on to the daily roster, and whether using let's see, the net duty or the daily roster, this module is where keeping track of your personnel is huge. This is the one where I saw more people lose points because they didn't want to do the work. They would just say, hey, my minimum staffing on SOPs is this, and they'd move on. That's it. Here you go. And the ones that went either to the HR department said, hey, give me all the number of hours that were worked, including overtime, or in our case, you could use ER and say, here's all of our hours. That extra point, whatever, if it's 100 and if it was 18 guys on duty normally with minimum manning, and I was able to show, hey, I've got 19.1 is what I paid. That 19.1, because again, this is 15% of your entire grading is your staffing. So that 19.1 is going to play a heavier part than, hey, let's go ahead and put an extra nozzle on that truck. What was, I think that was 6% for an engine. So this is where you want to show, you're not even having to spend extra money. You're just showing, hey, this is what my staffing is. Your volunteer department, hey, the guys are out playing Xbox, but they're in the station waiting for a call. Hey, clock in and out, log your time, do something. Show that your hours, there are actually some manned hours there even for volunteer department. So again, I put a little, that's just not an actual statistic of 90% of the time your hours are better. That's just kind of from the heart. I just felt like there were more departments got better points for taking extra time on that. So the report for that I found that worked best for us was 1193. You run this report. It's going to show, like this guy, the first one there, Ryan Ashley, he was on injury leave for a little bit, part of the year. He had paid days off, family leave, sick leave. So his schedule was only 1317 out of 24-hour guys, somewhere around 2912 in a year. So, but we throw those hours in. Joel Bain, he is a fire prevention guy. That guy we would actually pull out because he is not suppression. So we would remove him. The Cameron Barnhart, he is a 24-hour guy. I'm only going to add the 2172 to his hours, and then Doug B. about same thing, add his 1722. So in the end, ours was somewhere around 200,000 paid hours in overtime. And that came out to 21, 22 guys. You divide it by 8760, which is simply 24 hours times 365 is 8760. So you take the total number of hours you paid in a year and pull out your training, you pull out your sick leave, you pull out anything that was not staffed on duty hours, and divide it by 8760, and then that'll give your average on duty. And like I said, almost always you're going to come out better showing what we paid in regular and overtime versus just taking the easy way out and using minimum manning. Let's see, as a volunteer, hold on, let's see here. There's a question on that one. As a volunteer department, can we just log a daily roster when my guys are at station anytime? Yeah, I mean, log it in there. If they're going to actually be there, because ISO is going to give you a 6-minute delay. Somehow it's built into that. I don't totally remember the formula. The 3-minute delay is given to on-duty personnel that's disengaged from what you're doing, turning out and getting in the vehicle. It's double for a volunteer person. So if there's guys sitting in the station, absolutely you want to keep any records. Just make it a habit. Guys, you're here hanging out, no problem. I don't have a problem with that, but log your time that you're here. Maybe they're checking trucks, maybe they're training, maybe they're washing the trucks. I mean, whatever, just socializing, but they're there ready and willing to go on a call, then I would log that time. Let's see, for a volunteer department, would the training time count for this as well as if training is occurring at the station? The on-duty time, yeah, I mean, I probably would. Yeah, they're there training, but they're also ready to respond. Absolutely. I would say when you guys get in here, clock in. Yeah, it's training, but if we get a call, you guys know what to do. Absolutely.
Hey, David, I think Brandon's got a good question. You may have looked over just an accident. Do you select multiple training codes for trainings that may account for more than one category? Also, what are your base training code categories? I think you kind of touched this a little bit, the double dipping or pollinating,
Yeah,
however you want to
okay,
describe it.
yeah. And that's where we sometimes use our standards. The standards tab, we actually threw in some of our codes. You don't want to, that's one thing you don't want to falsify is if you were training for 3 hours, you don't want to show that we got 12 hours of training. You don't want to say, hey, I'm going to give you credit for 3 hours of this, 3 hours of this, 3 hours of this. But then you also fall into, well, golly, I want to get credit for all this. So do I put 3 hours of total training of this code, or do I put 1 hour of this code, 1 hour of this code, or 1 hour of this code? Michael, I'll let you get on that one. That's something we've kind of struggled with. We use standards for that, is what we've ended up doing.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. That use the standards is typically as a trainer. It's what we recommend. It's not essentially double dipping. There's different reports you can pull. Let's say, for instance, the ISO evaluator comes in and says, "Hey, I need to see so and so's company level records." Well, you can pull the standards based upon. You can pull those records based upon that standard. Or I need to see so and so's driving records. You can just search based upon the standard and not based upon the training code or total hours.
Yeah, that's what we've done. And if it's ropes, ladders, and something else, we may throw that in one standard and just
company level. In.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So does that kind of answer his question?
Brandon, does that help you out? Yes.
Okay. Looks like I missed one here. Got another question here.
John wrote, do volunteers at the station need to have a minimum amount of members to make up a crew to get credit?
No. That's the beauty of the partial credit. If you guys had half a person, you're gonna get. It's just kind of like even on paid. If I divided 200,000 hours by 8760, I'm going to be getting credit for a piece of a person, 1/10 of a person even. Volunteer would work the same way. You could get partial credit.
All right, I believe we're caught up.
Okay. Let's see, and that actually sums up what I've got. I just was going to go back and summarize this spreadsheet I made yesterday. Again, it just kind of shows the ISO item with the ER report number, and just something that I think could help everybody maybe. Again, that's downloadable, as well as kind of a narrative to this whole slideshow is also downloadable, and feel free to use those to help your department.
And for those who aren't familiar with the GoToMeeting control panel, David did mention earlier, there's some handouts down the bottom. There's a drop down. He did include as a benefit for us that spreadsheet you're looking at now. You can download that, and then also a Word document just basically explaining the ISO process. And we'll see if anybody's got any last minute questions. But for those who are curious, I will gather all the questions together and questions with answers, and I will distribute them out to the registered email list so you guys do have a copy of those. Looks like I got a couple questions coming in here. Looks like Dean tagged on to, you mentioned about having volunteers hanging out at a station. Where do you log them in to get credit for coverage?
Credit on volunteers? Well,
Yeah.
I'd probably put them in the daily log, and because that is a
Yep.
report you could run on that. So I'll just put in the log, make a code in there for that. I don't think we have a code, me personally, for that. Let me see here. Can they still see the screen here?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So, for us, we've got a daily roster. I generally hit the roster, but for for your guys, they can go down here on this log, and then it would show information that would be related to that. So if I hit all stations, all this information here, then when I went to go run a report, I could run a daily log report and get those hours. You have to do a little bit more legwork on that because it's not going to keep them like the daily roster will. But you could create a roster on the fly when they came in. But I think the daily log would be your best answer there.
Yeah, just kind of touch base on that. You typically, like you said, you can do an activity code based upon station standby. That sometimes some things we do recommend with volunteer departments make a station standby activity code, and then you could run a report based upon how long they've been, how many times the station's been manned, on what days, how many hours, and that can definitely help with obtaining credit.
Yeah, I mean these are all codes we've got here. I saw a question on there about hydrant colors.
Yeah. So Greg Anderson asked.
Yeah, and the hydrant colors. I don't think I'm looking at the book right here while we're on here. I don't think there's actually any specification that will give you extra credit for actually coloring them. It's item 620. This would be the size, type, and installation. I think they're mostly, when I was working for them, and even when they come out to us, they want to know how many are on a 6-inch and larger outlet or main line, and then how many have 2.5s, and a steamer, whether it's a 4 or 5, whatever you have on for your steamer. But they want to make sure it's on a 6-inch line and that you have at least 2.5s. But most of them are looking for a large diameter hookup as well. But they use NFPA 1142 and the American Water Works standard. And if they really want to be a bear about it, they can come and say, hey, are you doing the American Water Works where you've put a plumb bob in there and timed how fast it drained? And I've never had anybody, even when I worked for them, I never went to that extent of, hey, are you guys doing all those American Water Works tests on this? It was more of, hey, did you make sure that all leaves or not leaves, but trees are away from it? Is it operational? Is it too low, too high? Is there an obstruction of any kind? That's more of what they're looking for as opposed to the coloring. Yeah, I don't see anything. You can download the FSRS from the internet as well. I don't see anything in there that talks about color coding matching NFPA on that. How do you use report 1086? Okay. So the next question.
The question just for everybody was, so the question was, how do you use report 1086? All of our equipment lives in the maintenance module. That seems to correlate more to something supply based. Could you possibly show the inventory module? So just kind of reiterate on for those in the audience, we have the maintenance module, which is your apparatus and your equipment, but then we also have the inventory module. So the inventory module is more focused towards your consumable goods. So consumable goods meaning things like truck soap, paper towels, toilet paper. That's more or less for the inventory module. So if that's where you were headed, Brandon, let me know, or we can kind of clarify.
Yeah, because and honestly, our department did not use that report 1086. I just found that could be potentially good for this. We actually took the actual ISO report and went out there and did it. because our last one, the new maintenance module, wasn't out yet. So I have not used this one for an ISO audit.
We got a great question for Mike if you're ready.
Okay.
So for departments that aren't fully hydronated, I'm not sure how that was going.
Yeah.
Would large ponds and similar water sources count for the 1,000 foot range?
Only if you have got, and this is next to impossible to happen, but if you can get a engineer to certify to withstand a 50-year drought, yes. So some of them are spring fed and they'll do that, but at least in Oklahoma, I've never seen an engineer put his stamp on anything that wasn't like Corps of Engineer design. They don't even want to touch ponds.
Like dry hydrants?
Yeah, for dry hydrants. Yep. So it kind of, if you maybe got a real lenient ISO rep, he might, but large ponds typically are not creditable. And for a hauled water, and then you have to do the hauled water too. It's not even just having the pond there or the lake. You have to prove that you can deliver 250 gallons a minute from that location, and because they're going to figure up a dump time, a fill time, and then a supply site time. So you've got a lot of mechanics going on there. You're trying to prove that you got a $1 billion water system on wheels, and it takes minimum of three tankers. Generally, 5 is more appropriate to match a hauled water classification to a hydrogen classification. Is that too much information?
I think, wait to see if we got a follow up here, but looks like we're caught up. All right, I'll give it a couple, 3 minutes for any last minute questions while we're
Looks
waiting
like
for those. What's that?
I see a water supply question. We have a water company owned supply system. Do the maintenance records suffice ISO? What they're going to do is they're going to go say, hey, what's your water system? You got a standpipe. Do you have an elevated tank? Is it a double ellipsoid? They're going to ask all sorts of questions. What they're going to be looking for is a 20 psi head pressure. And if you just have a ground level standpipe, they're going to take away the first 46 feet because it takes more than 46 feet to develop 20 psi head pressure. So you're kind of at the mercy of like a rural water district sometimes to what their equipment is. They're really going to ask more about filters, pumps, line sizes, capacities, as opposed to maintenance. Now, on the hydrants, it doesn't matter who does it. If it's you, your water department, a rural water district, a third-party company, they will want to see those records for two different things. Flushing, annual flushing, and then flow testing. The flow testing, you only need to do a percentage of your hydrants. You don't have to do 100% of your hydrants on flow testing a year, which is your static residual, your 2 hydrant tests. Those, like we do 30 of those, and they're happy with that. They're like, we've tested every component in every approximate area of our city, different line sizes, and they're always happy with that. Now the flushing, you're not doing any pedo testing or anything like that necessarily. You're just opening them up, cleaning them out, making sure they're operational, noting any defects, reporting it to the water service or the water company. And so there's 2 different things going on there that ISO is looking for.
All right, thank you.
Let's see. Report
Jeremy asked.
963. Oh, go ahead.
Jeremy asked if you're jumping on 963 from Greg Anderson. I think he was touching base on the previous question about inventory and equipment list.
Okay. Oh, okay. He was answering the question. I got you.
Yeah, and I think Jeremy's showing. Can you show an example where your department utilizes the training codes, as our department utilizes 1001 chapters reference each training code?
Okay. So within ours, let's see. I'll go into our settings and training codes. This is our trunk, I guess, as you will. We've tried to hit some high-level areas. We've got the driver operator. Blue card command is we've used that for our officer training. Then the ISO, requirements. I mean, we've got sort of a high level there, and then our actual training codes are a lot thicker. And this is where you're trying to get to was, so for ISO training, here is the trunk was ISO training. the code would be a big branch off of that. And so here's all the codes for ISO training. We've got company, driver, facilities, hazmat, kind of put them in there. Now, when I run that report, it'll run all of this stuff, and then I can kind of sort through what I want. Does that give you kind of a visual?
See if we get a response here. Great explanation.
And then our standards, I can hit that and show you. I've referenced the ISO standards like 580A, live fire training. And so while we may put in a code of company training, I may add to that training class a standard for life facilities fire training, and it's not going to add extra hours to it's not going to falsify my records. If I was there for 3 hours doing company training, I'm not going to get another 3 hours for live fire facility. It's just going to give me whatever I put in for the actual course.
Yeah, and just to touch base a little bit further on that, you can attach more than one standard for a training class. So like let's say
excellent point.
If you did driver's training, you can capture, driver's training, you can also capture some company level training also.
Yep.
Depending on what report you're going to pull.
Exactly. Let's see, what do you run to hydrant test results? Let's see here. I ran. So for the flow test, I would do the 1248. 1246 would be the maintenance history. And then 1243 would give you the actual, so they're going to ask you, hey, how many hydrants do you have that are 2 outlets? How many do you have 3? That's going to be 1243. Report 1243 is going to give you a summary of what your hydrants are. 1246 is going to give you the maintenance. Hey, I flushed them. We checked for damage. And then report 1248 is going to be the actual flow test, which is going to give you a static, residual, and a pedo. And again, that's going to be a 2 hydrant test. That should be 2 hydrant tests because you can't get your static and residual and pedo all from. You can get static residual from 1 hydrant, but the pedo's got to be a 2nd hydrant. Okay.
All right. Looks like
we get caught up there.
Looks like we're caught up. Yeah. So it looks like we're at the top of the hour. Okay. Last chance to get last questions in, but David, I'd like to thank you for your time. Great information. I know this is the topic typically most departments, most agencies are a little bit shy about and not knowing how to prepare for it. And it's great ways that great examples of how you showed ER can help prepare for this.
Yeah. See, Brandon had a question.
Oh, yep.
Would you classify your driver training under driver operator or under ISO annual requirements? I would go driver. Well, I would probably go. Let's see, new driver or existing? I would do. Yeah, I don't know why we don't have them there. That's a good question. I can't answer that one. My training chief would do that. I'd call my training chief up and say, "Hey, be sure and record my hours."
So just kind of again, just touch base in my department. You got one, okay?
Existing driver. Yep. And then in the
this would be one of the ones I capture
hours.
with standards. Yeah.
Yeah, right there. And does that affect reporting? Well, I mean, ultimately the report's going to show the different hours. If I did the, let's see, 1623, I mean, that's going to be, if I ran all of these, but if I just wanted to run the, so here's my choices here from those training codes. I can hit, where's existing driver? So that's the other reason you want to do training codes is when you run this report, that's what you're going to have to choose from. So for this year so far, we usually do ours late spring, early summer. So we haven't hit on it yet, but that's just showing 3 hours for this year so far. So yeah, be sure and put the training codes. I forgot about that. Okay. Yeah, there was for last year's. Okay, drinks. Okay, all right. Does that affect reporting? I don't. Did I answer that, Brandon, on affecting reporting?
Hey, while you're in there, David, go ahead in the training and open up the reports tab up top and just kind of give an example of the different. Go inside the training, the main training module. I'm sorry,
Oh, yeah.
and then up top here in reports, and you can just see these are all the reports that are based upon training. It might be a little bit hard to. I'm not sure if you can zoom in.
Uh,
That's
in
fine if
which
you
part?
can't. But for those who aren't familiar with, again, there's a couple. You'll see the word ISO on some of those reports. Be sure you look at in the title what it's looking for. So you'll like, for instance, that one, ISO training hours per personnel per training code category. Now you'll have the word standards in there. So that's where it's pulling from that standards tab. This is pulling from the training code category tab. Multiple different ways you can pull reports from.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah.
So the biggest with an ISO evaluation, the biggest goal is like David mentioned earlier. It used to be a multi-day event. Now it's 2 to 3 hours. The quicker you can get them in and out, the better it is for you typically. And that's where ER comes in to help you keep that process smooth and streamlined. So
Okay. Yes, really. I was more questioning the difference between base training code categories, driver operator versus annual ISO when you would use each. I'm gonna leave that one more to Michael, I think.
let me see. Brandon, I tell you what, I will shoot you my email address, and if you want to touch off base offline, I'll be happy to help you out where I can. So um, think that's kind of the last that we got here. Top of the hour. I don't hold anybody else past the time. David, if you got anything else you'd like to mention, otherwise, I will close out the session. Just for those familiar with, this is all recorded. This will be posted hopefully the next week. So if you missed anything or just we're totally, there's a lot of information that we throw at you here. If you want to watch it again, it'll be available and check it out. And always, you can always reach out to us at training@emergencyreporting.com, and we'll hopefully be able to answer any questions you might have. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good day. Stay safe.